Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome to our little testing table in the middle of the sandbox mode. In today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at the newest addition to the game, the Steam engines. These items were added in the most recent stable patch to the game, and hopefully they're going to be pretty good, mostly because I absolutely adore the idea of having a massive Steam engine with a lot of modular components in which we can take off and add and customize to our liking. Anything with a lot of choices in regards of making certain parts more effective at the cost of other sections, I always do adore. So perhaps making it very space efficient, but of course costing a lot of resource or fuel, or making it very, very resource efficient, but making it absolutely huge. I adore being able to have those choices. Now that said, I haven't actually yet built a functional Steam engine. Online there is very little information about this particular engine type, and I've purposefully tried to stay away from people talking about it. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We are going to make a functional Steam engine, probably not going to be the best Steam engine in the world, but that's what our goal is, to go through the guide, to figure out how it works, and to see the strengths and the weaknesses of this particular engine type. So, let's go straight into the Steam guide. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to the tutorials in From the Depths, they seem to have a very mixed reaction. Some people seem to think they're pretty good, and a very large section of people seem to think they're a little bit hard to follow or don't really cover the important points. So hopefully this will at least give us the very basics so that we can experiment ourselves. So to start off with, we have the Steam controller. The controller is the main component, and we can interact with it to increase or decrease the burn rate for the attached boilers. And interestingly, it says resource burn rate rather than fuel, so I can assume that perhaps since we don't have coal or other resources like that in the game, we will just burn material, perhaps. Which means we wouldn't need a fuel refinery, which would be really helpful, so I'm hoping that's going to be the case. The steam boiler produces steam. Well, yep, we can guess that. You can make the boilers as long as you like. We can then attach that via steam pipes, which will carry steam to other components. We can use steam vents to plug leaks, as well as to prevent overall pressure from exceeding safe levels. That's pretty cool, and probably a quite necessary component. We then have the Turbine Generator. This is where it gets a bit confusing, I imagine. The turbine generators can convert steam into battery power. The higher the steam pressure, the more battery power produced. Turbines hook up to both of the turbine generators and steam piping to allow the generator to function. Larger turbines produce more battery power. Okay. I see, so that's the intermediate. Okay, that makes sense. The Gearbox. The Gearbox produces engine power. Oh, that's so good. For a second there, I thought we would always need a battery setup. I'm really happy to see we also get basic engine power. Next, the crankshaft attaches to the gearbox and is turned by pistons. Hello, pistons. And the pistons themselves are what attach to the steam pipes. You can have up to 4 pistons per crank point. Okay, oh, I guess left, right, up, down. The crankshaft generator produces battery power when attached to a crank wheel. Oh, so we can use this for, well, both engine power and for battery if we attach the end to these little generators. And that's that. That doesn't seem too complex, honestly, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so apparently the tutorial was being done above us, and now I am completely blind by the fact we were looking into the sun. And now we're going to be completely covered in bits of steam engine. That's Just really weird. Okay, let's get started until we get covered in little bits of steam engine, then we can fix it as we go. And apparently I can't jump up to the top of here, so let's get to work then. So we go to steam engines, let's go with the larger version, just because that means we can see what we're doing a little bit more. After waiting for a few minutes, all of the steam engine has currently fell to the floor, so it's a little bit less distracting. So to get started, we have added the boiler control, or the steam control. Apparently it's called two different things. And this is the large variant, because that should be a little bit easier to see what we're doing. And to that, let's attach several boilers. So we can control from here how many materials we burn. So let's put that down to minimum for now, so we don't run out of materials. Now I can automatically refill our materials at any given time because we're in the sandbox mode, but I would like to see just how fast it will burn them when it's set at different levels. Also, perhaps I should make this a little bit smaller. No, let's just stick with this for now. It's a little bit on the big side, and apparently we can add fireboxes, which are decorative only. Oh, that looks nice. Gives it a bit of texture. Yeah, that's nice. I'll leave them there. So to that, we want to add our steam piping. There we are, and if we have a separating pipe, in fact we have several, let's go with this one, we can then go ahead and add a steam release, or a pressure release vent, as it's called in the game. And let's put it up here, because I think this would look cool. There we are, we now have a release valve in case it gets too high in terms of pressure. And by the looks of things, we can also control when it tries to release. I wonder how high the pressure actually has to be before it starts causing damage. I imagine it's quite lenient, because this is going to be quite a large setup if we're going to add it to a larger ship. And I can imagine the pipes not being the most heavily defended. 150 health with 6 armor. That's actually a lot higher than I originally thought. So perhaps it is a little bit more difficult to destroy. I really don't know right now. So the next thing then we want is to set up our gearbox and everything else. So what's the best way of doing this? Let's go with the large version again, and the steam section has to attach to the pistons. The pistons then attach to the generator. So let's say I want them along here. Like so. Then we would want all of our other components to go along here. So let's have this one higher. I think this is correct. I'm really hoping this is correct at least. I'm kind of placing them down in a weird order, hopefully understanding what we're doing. So let's go with the pistons again. Let's have them like this. Bit of space between them so we can see what we're doing. And then over here, we'll once again raise this area so we can add the gearbox itself. And let's go here with that. So this then has cranks and it has shafts. So the shafts themselves, I imagine, are just the attachment pieces, but the cranks, okay, yeah, they do attach directly into the piston. We have the cased crank and the regular crank. What's the difference? This component has a casing to support the shaft, whereas that one is just regular. This one has more health, but costs more. In addition to that, it's also a little bit heavier, so let's go with the cased version. It looks a little bit better in my opinion, and it sounds like it can support the thing it's on, so maybe that makes sense. Also, that's really weird. They've all attached like that by themselves. Okay, I will go along with that. So then next, we need to attach the steam pipes themselves onto this. I'm also saying the word themselves far too much. Also, that last one should not have been that. It should have been a corner pipe instead. So I'm no longer giving resource to this vehicle. And that is producing 300 engine power. Let's up this a little bit, shall we? To maximum, why not? So there we are, the pressure is increasing, so is everything else, and wow, the engine power is going up. Now on 3,000 and rising, although that is using a lot of material. But the material use isn't increasing. So if it stays like that, and we get any more engine power, this may actually be quite efficient. Because we would be using a lot more fuel than we're using material currently. Although very efficient refineries can turn a lot of material into fuel, so a little bit of math would be needed to see if that's actually efficient. The pressure in the pipe is still increasing, so is the steam volume. Here's a thought. Would this be a smart thing to do? The answer is probably no. We're currently on almost 13,000 engine power. Okay, for the material we are using, that is actually good. I'm almost certain of that, because that is a ridiculous amount of engine power. And it's still increasing. I wonder how high this will eventually go. And would I need more pistons? I just allowed the system to completely exhaust the material we had on the structure, and it still continued to rise in engine power. It didn't stop, even after consuming the full 2,000. So right now, I've allowed it to have infinite resources again, and once again it is starting to spin up. But I do have one question. Would moving this forward be better for the system? Because that way, we don't have all of these excess shaft segments, which I can only imagine are somewhat inefficient. Let's turn that off for a second, there we are. Oh wow, that went to 16,000 for a second there. I assume because we turned off the system, the pressure started to rise. In fact, if the pressure is how powerful this is, what if, at least for now, we turn off the pressure valve? That increased by a rather large margin. Hooked up to a steam pipe with pressure of 480, steam volume of that. Rotation speed is currently on 1,300 degrees per second. Pistons take damage at 1,800 degrees per second or more. Oh, you see, that is why we would need a pressure release valve. So if this is fueling separate sections and one section gets damaged, the steam is no longer being used up, so the remaining system would then have way more pressure to deal with, and apparently if these have too much power, they will take damage and I can only assume get completely destroyed. So that is why we want a pressure release valve, but perhaps I just had it on a far too low setting. So instead, let's put it on 1,700. If they take damage on 1,800, I feel like that's a fairly safe thing to put it on. So let's put this back. There we are, so this isn't turned on, but if the pressure gets far too high, it will suddenly go into action. Let's say if I do this. Click. That lost me a lot of power for a second. So now, so now these are speeding up. So really, as soon as they start heading towards the maximum rotation speed, that's when we're going to want more cylinders, because it does seem like the more cylinders we have, the more crankshafts, and the more shafts, or shaft as this is called, the less efficient the system. So basically, the smaller the better, and only increase size when you have to. And that's only from what I'm seeing so far, of course. I could be wrong about a lot of things. But there we are, that's a really, really powerful engine for actually not too much space, especially considering we've splayed this out quite a bit. Let's turn off infinite resources, and that's how fast we're burning resource. It's quick, but for the amount of power, that's not actually awful. It's not fantastic, but I'm sure there's ways to make this more efficient. The next thing I would like to look at then, before we move on over to the generators themselves, the turbines, is creating electrical energy using the gearbox, and by the looks of things, we need to use the wheel. So the wheel is now spinning, which then attaches to... Is that actually attached? because that doesn't look attached, but it is causing the animation to go off. So let's just throw down some batteries to see if that is actually somehow causing electricity. It apparently is. And wow, that is a lot of power. How much power is that generating? Can it say anywhere? Doesn't seem like there's any tooltip to say exactly how much I'm actually generating. But that just increased it. But it has sacrificed not as much engine power as I would have thought. It's not an amazingly high amount of power, but it's fairly decent. Especially considering this is also still powering 14,000 engine power. And it hasn't caused the material to go down any faster either. Okay. And also when the batteries are full, it seems to automatically put the power back into the regular engine power, so that is actually fantastic. Okay then, so that's a fairly simple way of doing things. Now let's have a look at the other form of power. The other form of power is the Turbine Generator. So let's see if we can set this up. So to start off with, let's just remove everything we've put down so far, which apparently just caused some explosions within the system, which makes a lot of sense, considering we've just attached all of that and then removed it so the steam had nowhere to go. There we are. Let's turn this down for a second. There we go. Turn you off. All of the steam can be released, and we can set up our next system. Here we are then, the pipes have been refurbished and most of the batteries were replaced, so there's only a little bit of power currently residing in that huge chunk of battery. So let's first of all put down our Turbine Generator, which, from the tutorial at least, seems to go the furthest away from the pipe. Then we have the front. Now that may be wrong, perhaps the end should go here since this is the end of the system, but I'm going to go with this order, and of course if it doesn't work, we can simply swap them out afterwards. Then we have the middles, then we have the large turbine window. I'm assuming that's just the exact same, except for it has a window attachment. It does seem to be, it's got all the same stats, and even the same description. So for now then, let's just go with the regular, just in case. Then, to finish off, we put on the end, and we are generating power. Okay, so the... wait. Yeah, so the end attaches to the steam pipe itself, and then we have this over here. I'm going to turn off the pressure release valve here, because nothing so far has said that it takes damage from excess pressure. The pressure is increasing, and that's directly causing us to get more energy, so I don't think having the pressure valve there is really worth it. That doesn't seem to be really generating more power than the last system. But saying that, we've only just turned it on, and everything so far seems to take time to build up. That seems to be the main theme with this engine type. It takes time, but it gets more powerful as time goes on without increasing the material use. It's currently doing 8.5 material per second, so 8.5 is being burnt per second to create a grand total of 17,000 steam volume. And I assume we can increase that by simply doing that. Yep, there we go, it's now 9.9, it's now 11.4. And this is, oh, it's actually maxed out our energy, so let's put down some new batteries. Now that's pretty quick. Not as quick as I would expect, though. Let's turn off the infinite material. Yeah, that's going down fairly fast. I am surprised by the lack of power there. It's definitely quick, but my laser tank has a very similar speed in terms of energy gain, so... and that's much smaller. But saying that, the steam engine is still apparently increasing in power, because this is still going up. It's now at 5,000 energy per second. And now it's 6,000 energy per second, which is definitely a lot. Okay, I take it back then. This is now very, very fast, although the infinite resource just ran out, because of course we turned that off, so let's turn it back on. We don't want the poor boiler to turn off. Let's see how high this will eventually go. Let's just leave this running. I'll add a ridiculous amount of batteries and then remove them and just allow it to feed into something, because I do have a feeling that if we can't feed the power somewhere, that may cause problems. Maybe. 7,700, 7,800, 900, and 8,000 for this much resource. That is a lot of resource, to be fair. 2 minutes later, after getting myself a drink, and now the steam turbine generator is at 21,000 energy per second. It seems like the energy per second is certainly slowing now. It's not quite gaining as fast as it was before, but even so, that is far more energy than I'm ever going to have to use. And although it is using 11.4 material per second, which is certainly a lot of material, this is definitely more energy than I'm ever going to want, so I don't think I'm ever going to build on this scale, or at least, I'm going to try and make it more efficient. I'm not sure if lower burn rates are more efficient, or if they're always around about the same efficiency, just higher number versus lower number, but I would never need this, and it's not even as big as I first thought it was. As a bit of a reference, if we're going to put down a fuel engine, like let's say the Hercules here, there we are, that there is 2,000 regular engine power, and it's around about a quarter of the size, let's say maybe a fifth of the size, and it's nowhere near a fifth of the overall power produced. Of course, you can make engines far, far more power per volume than that, but that's a pretty good all-rounder. In fact, I think this one's even more favouring fuel efficiency, so maybe that's not the best example, but even so, even if we go down the route of something like the RTGs, this large RTG only produces 675 energy per second. This is now almost producing 22,000. So imagine the volume of these we would need to get the same amount of power. So what I really think so far is that the steam engine has a lot of things I'm missing, I feel, in terms of making it more efficient, but is definitely going to be good on very large builds, because it's not overly space consuming, but it can hit incredibly high numbers, both in terms of engine power and in terms of battery power. So for now, I am going to call the episode. I'm going to go off and do a little bit of research on my own to try and get a much better setup, because I'm sure I've done some things horribly, horribly wrong as a first look, and I hope you've enjoyed. Now, normally, I wouldn't record things like this. This is the type of stuff I do off camera when I'm trying to figure out a new concept and try to build a brand new build. If you do enjoy this, then please consider hitting the like button and perhaps leaving a comment down below. I always say it helps, but when I'm trying to introduce something new like this, it really does show that it's something you're interested in. So, thank you so much for watching. I really, really do hope you've enjoyed, and goodbye. Off camera, it's time to do a bit of research.